It is said that if one is already engaged in Krishna consciousness and is rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord, then it can be supposed that he has finished all the recommended courses of austerity, penance, religion, sacrifice, mystic yoga, and meditation. Devahuti's husband was so expert in the transcendental science that there was nothing for him to argue about. And when she heard him speak, she was confident that since he was very much advanced in devotion service, he had already surpassed all transcendental educational activities. She had no doubt about the gifts offered by her husband. She knew that he was expert in offering such gifts, and when she understood that he was offering the greatest gift, she was very satisfied. She was overwhelmed with ecstatic love, and therefore she could not reply. Then with faltering language, just like an attractive wife, she spoke the following words. So being very happy about Kardama Muni telling her that he would give her transcendental gifts very rarely obtained by persons of aristocracy. Mother Devahuti was very pleased and was anticipating the greatest gift, which she knew that whatever Kardama Muni was giving was not ordinary gift. And because she knew that Kardama Muni was very elevated and had achieved a transcendental platform, has surpassed all transcendental educational activities, and therefore whatever he wanted to offer as a great gift as expressed by him would not be an ordinary gift. And hearing that, she was overwhelmed with ecstatic love for Kardama Muni, so much so that she could not reply to him. But with faltering voice, she continued to speak. That is the next verse. So the conversation between Devahuti and Kardama Muni bring forth very exalted relationship between a husband who is a representative of the Supreme Lord and the wife who is a humble servant of such a husband. We already discussed earlier part of this chapter how Devahuti's attitude of serving Kardama Muni exemplified how a disciple should be towards a spiritual master, completely dependent on the spiritual master's mercy, rendering service with humility and great reverence. Here also you see that she spoke in a choked voice because humility and love. In the beginning part, Prabhupada explained a lot about the two words Vishrambhena and Gauravena. That one, she had respectful Vishrambhena means intimacy and Gauravena means with great reverence. So now you see here the reverence, love and humility with great humility and love. So she was in a position of being a servant of Kardama Muni, subordinate, servant, wife, disciple. The appropriate feeling with which one should relate with these personalities like Guru or husband or elders is with humility and love. Why humility and love? Humility is one's natural position before one's elders. Love is because they are showered with so much mercy from the elders, spiritual master, husband, the recipient of spiritual mercy. So that is how there is a reciprocation of service from the disciple, offering a service from the disciple, and receiving of mercy from the spiritual master. So in this way, a transcendental loving relationship is mutual, reciprocatory. It is not one-sided. So these exchanges, loving exchanges of service from devotee, very, very, very sincere service by her, being from aristocratic family. She lived in a hermitage, very austere way, practically became emaciated in engaging in service of Kardama Muni, who was always absorbed in transcendental activities and did not have any interest time in that sense to engage in any kind of a facility and a loving kind of a life that a husband could give to the wife till of course this particular incident, after which Kardama Muni, he gives her all that is, including he blesses her with from her emaciated body to get a very beautiful body, and then continue with her as a husband and beget child, create beautiful palatial aerial palace for her, and they travel in that, they create the progeny. All that was a gift that he gave, but initially she underwent a lot of austerities. So this is actually a kind of a relationship between the Lord and his servant, and Guru and his disciple. The disciple is tested. A disciple is given an opportunity to express his sincerity of service, to express his devotion, to express his unstinted commitment to the spiritual master in the face of extreme difficulties. That's the test. And there is a tipping point. After a certain point, then the test ends, and one is showered with all spiritual opulences. That's happening here also to Mother Dehuti. This seems to be a very, one of the common patterns in which the Lord and the devotees, the reciprocation happens between the Lord and the devotees. As disciples of Srila Prabhupada, we have to take great austerities with determination to serve Srila Prabhupada. Normally we tend to think that service means doing big things, all those things. You have to understand the transcendental meaning of service. Transcendental meaning of service is that the one that pleases the spiritual master most is if the devotee is understanding the scriptures, along with performing services to him in the right attitude. So the spiritual master is very happy to see the disciple make advancement in spiritual life, which means Guru is very pleased by seeing the disciple chant Hare Krishna nicely, japa. He is happy to see that the disciple is undergoing this sadhana bhakti very nicely. In the face of extreme difficulties, inconveniences for the body, inconveniences for the mind, that is called austerity. So whether the devotee, disciple will take up all these austerities with a determination to fulfill the instructions of the spiritual master, that test one has to undergo before the spiritual master opens the floodgates of mercy to the disciple. And it is through these processes of purification, these austerities, these tests, that the devotee fixes himself in devotion service, undisturbed by material circumstances, undisturbed by the dualities of material nature. His mind becomes fixed to the lotus feet of Guru and Krishna. When that fixation happens, when one is fixed, then the floodgates are opened. Mercy is given to such a disciple. And mercy is in what form? Mercy comes in the form of jnana, vairagya, then love for Krishna. That means first the disciple who is stuck in this material world, he is stuck in the bodily concept of life. The bodily concept of life is a punishment for the living entity. Bodily concept of life is an imprisonment of the living entity. So first mercy that comes in the form of vairagya is liberation from the bodily concept of life. Then transcendental knowledge, the nature of spirit, the nature of spiritual variegatedness, the nature of the spiritual world, the existence of the spiritual world, these things become a fact to a devotee who receives the mercy of transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master. So when there is vairagya, when there is transcendental knowledge, where is the question of sense gratification? There is zero sense gratification. There is zero sense gratification. And when these two things come, then when these two gifts are given in the heart of the devotee by the mercy of the spiritual master, then one becomes situated in another energy of the Lord. Not the material energy of the Lord, but the spiritual energy of the Lord takes over such a devotee. But that does not happen unless the devotee is far away from any sinful activities. He is far away from sense gratification. His mind is fixed in the devotion service of the Lord. So, how the relationship between Devahuti and Kardama Muni has developed from the time Swayambhuva Manu handed over her to Kardama Muni. Verse after verse as we read, we see the perfection of this relationship of surrender. And then later on, she is now going to be gifted with a great transcendentalist like Kardama Muni. Giving a woman a child is obviously it will be a great devotional service, which we all know. That a great son was born. So devotee going to get this gift from Kardama Muni. And because of her devotion and commitment and love for Kardama Muni, whatever she is put into, any kind of opulence, all these things, she's already developed that attachment to Kardama Muni. Therefore, there is no question of her falling down into sense gratification in that sense. Sense gratification itself is, sense enjoyment itself is not sense gratification. Krishna says, I am sex life according to regulative principles. And Krishna says, I am sex life, that means there is sex enjoyment. And Krishna says it is him. So sense gratification is different. Sense enjoyment in one's life is not equal to sense gratification. Mayavadis means no sense gratification means no kind of sense enjoyment at all. So when it is authorized by the Lord, even materially, no doubt in the spiritual world there are spiritual senses and spiritual gratification. In that sense, spiritual enjoyment is there. And everything that is enjoyed is mercy of the Lord in the spiritual world. That apart, Krishna says, in this material world, I am sex life, he says. So in this material world, according to regulative principles, if one is engaging in conjugal relationship with one's husband, who is a representative of the Lord, conjugal relationship with the husband, who is established at the lotus feet of the Lord, that such a life does include, you will see in the next few verses, it includes opulence, it includes comforts, it includes enjoyment for senses, everything Devahuti is offered and given in the next few, as a gift from Kardama Muni. So, the presence of sense enjoyment is not necessarily to be misunderstood to be Maya. One can be situated in this material world, in service of the Lord, with ample opulences possible, ample, gift of, transcendental prasadam of the Lord. As far as devotees are concerned, whatever they get for their senses, they consider it as the mercy of the Lord, to be reinvested back into the service of the Lord. And there is appreciation, there is loving relationship with the Lord, of gratitude and love, seeing the unlimited mercy that the Lord bestows upon the devotee. So it's completely another energy that envelops a person who becomes free from, or a person who receives the special mercy of the spiritual master. No doubt, the instructions of the spiritual master itself is a mercy. So by taking the first dose of mercy of the spiritual master, what is the first dose of mercy? Take austerities to follow the instructions of the Guru. Take tapasya to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. That shows that tapasya gives us an opportunity to express our sincerity to Guru and Krishna. And Krishna says, Ye tamam prapadhyante tam sthite bhajamiham. As you surrender, I reciprocate. So ultimately, in spiritual life, we don't advance in spiritual life by accumulating things from below. It's not an ascending process of development. In the process of surrender, the devotee puts his effort to rise up to what the spiritual master is expecting. And then ultimately he succeeds because of the mercy that comes from the spiritual master. So, repeatedly Prabhupada in several places talks about God helps those who help themselves. It is an absolute statement. Even in spiritual life, it is a fact. God helps those who help themselves. So we have to make our attempts and He helps us. So ultimately when we succeed or when we have jnana, we have got vairagya, we get liberated from the bodily concept of life, and we lose all taste for sense gratification, lose all taste for this gratification of the mind and the body. It can happen only by the mercy of the spiritual master, Guru and Krishna. It's a point. That's why I said it's a tipping point. Go on struggling, anticipating that mercy of the Lord. The Lord works in the heart of the devotee to cleanse the devotee of all sense gratification. There is no conflict in such a devotee's mind of sense gratification. Whether I should enjoy, I should not enjoy. This conflict is at a lower level. Whether I should enjoy or whether I should not enjoy. So one side mind is saying enjoy, other side mind is saying don't enjoy. So this duality is there. But it is in this duality we have to express our adherence to Guru's preference, Guru's instruction. By going through these dualities, every disciple, that means Maya, is serving the Vaishnavas also. She does her job like anybody else. But when she does her job upon the devotee, it is as good as Vaishnava Seva. Because you are put in duality, you are pulled by Maya in different directions. And then you have to resist that. You have to resist that. You need commitment and devotion to your spiritual master, Krishna. You have to show your commitment to come out of this material world. So like that, repeatedly test is given and the devotee becomes stronger and expresses his commitment very firmly. Yes, I am determined. I want to get out of this illusion. And then wait for the Lord's mercy, Prabhupada's mercy. Then Prabhupada will give us that mercy. But 100%, there is a stage where when we get that mercy, then we become free from, there's no conflict. You are not free from sense gratification because you fight a conflict. You're in another plane. You're free from sense gratification. That is another yoga maya. Another divine energy is enveloping such a person. In fact, it says, next verse says, my dear husband, O best of the Brahmanas, I know that you have achieved perfection and are the master of all the infallible mystic powers because you are under the protection of Yoga Maya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband. So, these Mahatmas are under Yoga Maya. And our goal is also that. Like Prabhupada is writing these purports, here in the Yoga Maya, there cannot be any mistakes. Krishna is dictating. So our goal is also that. But in between also, whatever we do, we get the blessings of Guru for trying. It's not that, our devotion service will be perfect. Only we come under Yoga Maya. No. Our devotion service as a sadhaka, we take shelter of spiritual master. Those pulling of the mind towards sense gratification, one should not get disturbed. One should think this is the process by which I have to express my devotion, determination to go back to Godhead, to follow my spiritual master. This is part of the process. Disturbance of mind is part of the process. And only after a certain stage that there is no disturbance. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Pandit Prabhu. I would like to, if you allow me, to make a short commentary, and it's in regard to the magnitude of our Eternal Vindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As you pointed out in the last month of last year, the Prabhupada Acharya, a person of such a caliber who can be compared, as you say, not falsely, as in the level of Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and Nimbarkacharya, or for the influence, even Shankaracharya, regarding the influence that these people have. But the point I want to address is the deep factor of this particular chapter. We are talking here on third canto. It's not a 10th canto. And this advice is for the newcomers in the sense of, as we are all aspirant Vaishnavas, but we should learn constantly this transcendental science in the way that is being scientifically offered to us. Because Srila Prabhupada is not only Prabhupada Acharya, but is Rasika Acharya, in the sense that no sannyasi will, in such a detail, elaborate the feelings and relationships that we all must first understand within the parameter of the three-dimensional world before we can even start to scratch the nature of the Absolute. I was very much appreciative of your sequence of elaboration of this topic from the point of these two principles of approaching the Lord with intimacy as Paramatma essentially, but follow with the principle of Vairagya, analyzing that we are in a wrong body, in a wrong environment, but there is hope for relationship. And this is where this great Prabhupada Acharya is introducing us so technically. As I say before, no sannyasi will expose. I'm talking about sannyasi from the term of temporary existence. In the spiritual world, there is no such a particular consideration of varnashrama, because it's Daivi varnashram. All these designations are transcended. But the essential point that you had made in one of the classes, which relating to the intimacy, had to be understood not just by listening to one of your classes, but all of them, because that is the panoramic view that we all should learn. Not to read the news and people get influenced by our own needs in one particular audience or reading of a newspaper. The similar way, by reading Prabhupada's teachings and listening, is not just one class, but the sequence and how it elaborates such a deep principle that it involves this topic. Prahlada Maharaj, in the intimacy that he had with the Lord, he pulled him from one big stone formed in the pillar. And these two personalities had pulling him in one of the aspects that nobody will think that the Lord could decide to appear in the seminal form as Sri Kapila Deva. These elements of teachings, it cannot be found anywhere. In the course of time, when you grow into devotional service, you will find many people talking about understanding your spiritual body and spiritual relationship and so much within the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage. But Prabhupada has advised us that is not needed. Listen to his classes as given by his faithful devotees, and everything will be unfolded in the proportion of your sincere attendance. Meaning the attention that we are putting, the attitude towards listening, as Madhu Pandit Prabhu is saying. I just wanted to thank you.
Yeah. That is why Srila Prabhupada has even given us direction how one should go chapter by chapter, canto by canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Because if someone follows that, then he can see that connecting thread of how this transcendental concepts are being introduced step by step by Prabhupada. So being a good disciple means, you see, just like we should not think if you go to schools to study, then you don't go and arbitrarily enter into any class and sit. If you are in first standard, you take admission in first standard, then second standard, then third standard, like that. Suppose if you are your standard is second standard, you are supposed to get the lessons of third standard. You go and sit in the 10th standard. Will you understand anything? No. You may think you are understanding in your own world, but you will never understand what the teacher is teaching. So exactly in the same way, in transcendental learning, no doubt we don't need all the karma khanda, jnana khanda. Those are not the classes for us. We come directly to first standard of spiritual life. Those are all in another life. That's what this purport starts by saying, that one who has come to devotion service has done all austerities, all penances, all the benefits are over. They have come to the level of devotion service. But after coming to devotion service, one should understand that there is a method there also to go step by step. That first step is what I told about the austerity, our determination to stick to devotion service, to stick to the instruction of the spiritual master. All those things, those first few stages is what you see is being developed in the beginning part of all the first canto, second canto, third canto, the different Aishwarya concept of the Lord, the opulent, the powerful aspect of the Lord is being described. And finally, then when it comes to the highest principle of finer rasas, higher rasas. So if you jump to that, then you cannot do, you'll just sit in the 10th standard, that's all. Let's say somebody goes and sits in the 10th standard. Those who have systematically gone through class after class will pass the 10th standard and go. You may sit 30 years in the 10th standard. You'll still be in the 10th standard. So we need to go step by step the way Prabhupada said. If you go, there will be gradual elevation in Krishna consciousness, in our purification of our consciousness, and understanding the transcendental aspects of the Lord, all by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.